Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
It was a scene straight out of an action movie, specifically the Bourne Identity. On September 16th, 2008, the captain of a Staten Island ferry saw a woman floating face down in the Hudson River near the Statue of Liberty. Horrified and thinking they found a dead body, two deckhands jumped in a rescue boat and went to her. When they reached the woman, one picked her up by her ankles, while another picked her up by her shoulders. To everyone's shock, the woman took a gasp of air and started crying. This is how Hannah Upp was found after she went missing, the first time. Over the next decade, Hannah Upp, a young, well-liked teacher, would go missing 2 more times. After her first 2 rescues, she had no idea where she had been or how she had spent that time. On September 14th, 2017, Hannah was living in St. Thomas on the U.S. Virgin Islands. She had survived Hurricane Irma, and just days before Hurricane Maria was poised to hit, Hannah Upp disappeared for a 3rd time. Did she perish in the water as many people believe? Or is she still out there somewhere with no idea who she is? When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell you the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Hannah Upp. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the story going into the episode, and he's here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. Now, last week's episode was a listener request, and actually so is this one. And while Samantha Sayers' case hadn't been on my radar, this week's story about Hannah Upp is one that I was somewhat familiar with. And it's unlike our normal episodes, even the ones where the person did leave of their own volition, because in this, Hannah did decide to leave in a way, but she had no grip on her identity or reality when she did it.
All right, this story already is wild, so I can't wait to get into this.
No, I know. It's completely insane. So before we get into Hannah's incredible story, we've had a new member join us over on Patreon, so we would like to give a quick shout out to Catherine S. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you so much.
And remember, if you join us on Patreon at any level, starting at just $2 a month, you can get these episodes ad-free and also get a free copy of the ebook that I wrote. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into the story of Hannah Upp. Hannah Emily Upp was born on November 29th, 1984 in Salem, Oregon to Barbara Bellis and David Upp. The Upps were pastors in Japanese American churches during Hannah's childhood. Now, her parents are both white Americans, but Barbara used to teach in Japan and became fluent in the language.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The couple also had a son named Daniel. Hannah grew up as the princess of her church and was adored by everyone who met her. Her friends have described her over the years as someone who was giving and selfless almost to a fault. She always remembered birthdays and would listen to other people's problems for hours on end. When Hannah was entering her teenage years, her parents' religious beliefs, which had always been aligned, began to diverge. Her father began taking a much more hard-nosed approach to religion, with beliefs that included a strong anti-gay stance. In a newsletter, he even said that, quote, "there is no such human as a natural homosexual," end quote, and that people should, quote, "fully support biblical morality and to oppose any compromise with sexual deviance/perversion," end quote.
There was a whole lot there.
Right. And Barbara, his wife, Hannah's mom, was very much more of like a love thy neighbor type Oregon hippie person, you know?
Yeah.
So it just was not working for them after a while. And the two filed for divorce when Hannah was about 15. David then moved overseas and taught the gospel to indigenous tribes around the world. After graduating from South Salem High School in 2003, Hannah attended college at Bryn Mawr and joined several Christian organizations.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, she went across the country. However, her time in college and her exposure to people with different beliefs and religions caused the empathetic Hannah to evolve within her faith. The woman who came to college as an 18-year-old creationist ended up dating both women and men while at school.
Oh, that would be very much against Daddy's beliefs, huh?
Yeah, and, granted, he was on the other side of the world during this, but she still had a relationship with her father.
Maybe she didn't tell him that part.
Yeah, I really don't know, but it seems that whatever her life was, like that both of her parents did support her. Despite her father's dogmatic beliefs, the two remained close, and she often accompanied him on his travels about once a year. But Hannah was much closer to her mother, Barbara, who eventually became a United Methodist pastor and moved to the East Coast near Hannah. So I don't know if she moved to Pennsylvania when Hannah was in college or if it was a little bit after, but Barbara did eventually move to Philadelphia. Hannah's brother, Daniel, was a naval officer, so he was just stationed kind of all over the world as well. After graduating from Bryn Mawr, Hannah became a New York City teaching fellow and moved to the Hamilton Heights neighborhood in Manhattan. She taught Spanish at nearby Thurgood Marshall Academy. After successfully completing her first year, Hannah was getting ready to begin her second year of teaching while working toward her master's in education at Pace University. In late August 2008, she was enjoying the last days of summer break and preparing her classroom for the new school year. On Friday, August 29th, Hannah used her debit card to go watch a movie at Times Square. No one saw her for the rest of the weekend, but initially her friends and roommates weren't concerned, as she had told them that she was going to spend the weekend at her mother's house in Philadelphia.
Okay, so her friends think that she's down in Philly, but she's not?
No.
Okay. Is this the first time that she disappeared?
Yeah.
Okay.
By Monday, she hadn't come back. And this was completely out of character for Hannah, so her roommates were worried immediately, They didn't just blow it off and go like, oh, she's probably just shacked up with a dude or, whatever.
You said she's a school teacher,
yeah.
Right? So, not showing up on Monday, that's a huge deal.
Well, right. So it was Labor Day.
Oh, okay.
So school actually started on Tuesday.
Okay.
But she still had stuff to do,
right,
to, get ready or whatever. And again, school was starting, so she should have been there.
Right.
Multiple calls to her cell phone went straight to voicemail, and when they went inside her bedroom, they found her keys, phone, ATM card, Metro card, wallet, and passport. But no Hannah. I don't know how thoroughly they ended up searching her room then, but it should be noted that nothing was taken. So, no clothes were taken, no suitcases.
So it's like she walked out of her own life?
Yeah, her room was completely undisturbed, but all of her belongings were left behind.
Yeah, and you said to include her credit cards, right?
Yeah.
So wallet was there, so she didn't go to the movie.
No, she did. So that was on Friday, and that was the last time she used her debit card.
Okay.
Was Friday afternoon when she went to the movies.
Okay, got it.
So she must have come back to her apartment at some point after that.
Right.
But nobody had seen her. Her friends got in touch with Barbara, who rushed to the city and began to coordinate the search effort. They plastered flyers all over the city, and NYPD began an investigation. But no one could fathom what had happened to Hannah. Her friends said that she'd been acting normally in the days leading up to her disappearance, and finding her money and possessions indicated that she didn't just decide to take off. However, there was also no sign of foul play, no ex-boyfriend with a grudge, or any other indications that something dark had happened to Hannah. The 23-year-old was just gone. The Labor Day holiday came and went, and when the first day of school arrived on September 2nd, Hannah wasn't there to greet her new students. Meanwhile, her family and friends, both in New York and from college, were still frantically searching for her. They started a Facebook group called We're Not Giving Up, UPP, Hannah Up, on Hannah, which quickly grew to over 2,400 members. And this is 2008, so these are the very early days of Facebook. So those are very impressive numbers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, well, that's impressive regardless.
Yeah.
I think that would be impressive now.
Yeah, exactly, to have that many members that quickly.
Yeah.
Nearly 2 weeks after she went missing, people were beginning to believe that foul play was the only explanation for what had happened to her. That is, until she showed up at the Apple store.
Okay, wait. I thought you said that she was found in the river.
She was. I know. That's how insane this is. According to an incredible article in The New Yorker written by Rachel Aviv called How a Young Woman Lost Her Identity, police called Barbara down to the station to look at some surveillance footage from the Apple store in Midtown Manhattan. In it, she saw her daughter, dressed in running shorts and a sports bra, go into the store and talk to someone. Police would later learn that this person actually asked Hannah if she was the missing teacher. Hannah said she wasn't. Hannah then went to one of the display computers and checked her email. She briefly looked at the screen and then left.
Okay, so she remembered her email.
Yes.
She logged in.
She logged into her Gmail account.
So she remembered her email and her password.
Mm-hmm.
Checked something out, but refused to, or at least said that she wasn't the missing teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so she at least has partial memory
right
at that point, enough to log into her email.
Yeah.
No idea. We have no idea what she was doing, what she saw, and then she left.
Yeah. So I think what happened was that whether it's that person or somebody else, the one who she talked to, called in the sighting to the police. And so they pulled the surveillance to see if it was actually her. And then Barbara positively identified her.
And she was just in shorts and a sports bra.
Yeah. So this is obviously great news, but completely confusing and insane. And like nobody knows what to think at this point.
Right. Completely baffling.
Yeah. Like she's alive, which thank God, because like I said, they were really becoming concerned. But what the hell was she doing?
Right. Why was she only wearing what appears to be a jogging outfit?
Yeah.
And why is she saying that she's not the missing teacher? Oh, this is so interesting.
It's so crazy. And the entire city was searching for her at this time. Now, 2 days after this, she was sighted at a Starbucks in Soho. And because police had already like gotten the positive confirmation about her at the Apple store, when that sighting was called in, they responded immediately to try to like physically get to her.
So how many days has she been missing at this point?
So it's like 2 weeks.
With no cash.
Right.
No money.
No money.
At all. No way of getting money.
Yeah.
She's got to be eating and drinking.
Yeah.
You know, not drinking alcohol, but she has to be eating and drinking something.
Yeah, we'll get
staying
to that.
Alive.
Yeah.
So what the fuck is going on?
Oh yeah, we're getting to that part, which is wild. Anyway, so 2 days later, she's at the Starbucks. Police come, but right before they get there, she had already left out the back door.
Why did she leave out the back door?
I don't know. I thought that part was kind of crazy.
Well, yeah,
because not a lot of Starbucks in the city have back doors.
Yeah.
So I don't know the logistics of that. But yeah, so she left before the police got there, so they just missed her again. So now they've got 2 sightings, one at the Apple store, one at a Starbucks. She's been missing for 2 weeks. All right. Now, Hannah was also a member at New York Sports Club, which is a gym franchise in the city. Police then recorded sightings of her at 5. I read one place that it was 5 different locations. I read another place that it was 8 different locations. Either way, they found out that she had been going there and presumably going to shower.
Oh my God, this is like a Ryan Trahan video. Like when he's going across.
Yeah, and he gets like free passes to
free
gyms.
gym memberships. Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently what she had been doing was she would go in, and she was a member there, but she obviously didn't have her ID or her card or anything to get in.
Phone number, probably.
I don't know if it was the phone number, but yeah, she apparently would just go and tell the person at the front desk that she, didn't have her ID on her or whatever, and just they would let her in.
Is she still only in a sports bra at this point?
Yeah. But
so she's just wandering around the city for 2 weeks in gym shorts and a sports bra.
Yeah.
And it's September.
Well, it's late August, early September. It's still hot as hell in New York.
Okay. All right. I just feel like that would stand out.
Well, not at the gym.
Well, no, I just mean around the rest of the city, wherever she was going.
It really wouldn't.
Well, you would know better than me. I never lived in New York.
Yeah. So she was just going to all these sports clubs, and police didn't find that out until way later. This is not something that they found out in real time.
Sure. Because how can you track that in real time? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think they could have, but I don't think they even considered.
Why would you?
Looking there, you know what I mean?
Why would you? Ryan Tran hadn't released his videos yet, so how would they know?
So the search for Hannah quickly became a cat and mouse game and stayed that way for the next week until she was pulled out of the water.
3 weeks.
Just about.
3 weeks missing.
Yeah, a little under 3 weeks.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
So after Hannah was pulled out of the river, she was rushed to Richmond University Medical Center on Staten Island. When she arrived, the first thing she said was, "Why am I wet?" Medical staff questioned her, and she was able to tell them that her name was Hannah and give them her mother's phone number. Barbara rushed over to the hospital to find a confused daughter who was severely sunburned on the left side of her body. Other than the sunburn, Hannah was dealing with hypothermia and dehydration, but she was otherwise healthy. Friends began to visit, and her roommate, Manuel Ramirez, said that she told him, quote, "I hope they release me soon because I have to set up my classroom," end quote. Hannah had no idea that she had been missing for nearly 3 weeks.
So she's thinking that she still needs to get back to the first day of school.
Yeah. Yeah, she's thinking it's like Friday or whatever before school starts, and she wasn't finished setting up her classroom. In fact, she later told a reporter with the New York Times, quote, "I went from going for a run to being in the ambulance. It was like 10 minutes had passed, but it was almost 3 weeks," end quote. And so that is why she was in a sports bra and shorts, because she had gone out for a run, and that was the last thing that she remembered doing.
And so during this medical exam, did they, other than the sunburn, they didn't notice anything physical?
No signs of assault.
Yeah, like a bump on her head,
nope.
Cuts on her head, anything like that. No head trauma or anything.
Yeah, and Hannah and her friends and her mom, everybody who was there was trying to figure out what the hell happened. And that was what they were wondering. Was she mugged? Was she attacked in some way? And
I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking that, what if she fell and hit her head and there was some sort of amnesia or something. Well,
exactly. And so they were looking at all of those possibilities, but there are no physical indications that anything like that had happened. And Hannah, of course, didn't remember anything like that happening either.
Right.
So when police interviewed Hannah at the hospital, she told them about going for a run in Riverside Park, but said that she had no memories after that. After she physically recovered from her ordeal, Hannah was transferred to a psychiatric unit run by Columbia University Medical Center. They wanted to figure out exactly what was going on with Hannah's brain that would cause her to just lose time like this. But multiple brain scans revealed few clues, and the doctors concluded that her issue was psychological in nature. So even with MRIs and other scans, they couldn't find anything physical that causes, no tumor pressing down, nothing like that. And again, no physical injuries.
She should just get a tattoo gun right now.
I know. Memento style. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from this is loss of short-term memory. She needs to start tattooing who she is and where she's been.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. And she did. She remembered everything up until that run perfectly when she got to the hospital.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and there was one time when it sounds like a horror movie, right? So Barbara said that, she was in Hannah's room. Hannah was sleeping. Hannah sat bolt upright in bed, like gasped and said, "I was in a lighthouse," and then like fell back asleep. And then when Hannah woke up again, she had no memory of like saying that or being in a lighthouse or anything like that.
Whoa. Yeah, that's really bizarre.
So Hannah didn't have amnesia per se. Like I said, her long-term memories were all intact. She remembered everything about her life prior to going for a run on August 29th.
But isn't that the exact storyline of Memento? Like, he had long-term memory up to a point and then lost it.
Yeah, but then she gained it back and he didn't gain it back.
Well, okay, yeah, but one's fiction and one's real life. But isn't this?
Yeah, but I think it's more of like the Bourne Identity, right?
No, he had no idea who he was. He had no long-term memory at all.
Yeah.
He had no memory. He had complete amnesia. He had no idea who he was. And then it slowly started coming back. In Memento, he had long-term memory. He didn't have any short-term memory. I feel like that's a real condition. It's very rare, but it is a real medical condition, and I don't know what the term is.
Well, let me tell you. Eventually, doctors diagnosed her experience as a dissociative fugue. According to that New York article I mentioned earlier, a dissociative fugue is, quote, a rare condition in which people lose access to their autobiographical memory and personal identity, occasionally adopting a new one, and may abruptly embark on a long journey. The state is typically triggered by trauma, often sexual or physical abuse, a combat experience, or exposure to a natural disaster, or by an unbearable internal conflict, end quote.
Who was the case that we did?
Lawrence Bader.
Yes.
I know. When I was writing this, I was like, oh my God, we gave him such shit and like thought he was a con man. But what if like he truly wasn't? What if he was telling the truth the entire thing?
Went out on that boat fishing.
Yeah.
And fell into the water for whatever reason.
Because there was a storm. There was a natural disaster.
That's right. And had some sort of physical trauma.
Yeah.
That caused the fugue.
Yeah, because
I'm just going to term it the fugue.
Yeah, because he did go in and adopt a new identity.
Right.
And what different doctors say is that happens a lot, that these people do just adopt an entirely different identity. And that it was in fact really rare what happened to Hannah, that she wandered around really without one. Like that is actually less common.
Because with Lawrence Bader, like you said, like he adopted a completely new identity and had no recall of his original identity.
Yeah.
But she has snippets of her identity with like remembering the email address and remembering at least enough of her identity to get her into these sports centers.
Yeah.
So she hasn't adopted an identity, but has memory loss. From that
she hasn't like completely lost her identity, but mostly has.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. So according to both Hannah and her loved ones, she had an experienced trauma that was likely to trigger an event like this. She was even hypnotized to see if there was something that had been buried deep down, but nothing was found. The best they could come up with was that the beginning of the school year is a stressful time.
Sure. Yes, it's very stressful. But there are, millions of teachers who go through this and that doesn't happen. So there's got to be some underlying condition beyond just the stress of the start of a school year.
Yeah, but they couldn't really figure it out. So once the story of Hannah's rescue broke, people were flummoxed. Many believe that she had to have staged the entire event.
Which is the same thing that happened with Lawrence Bader.
Yeah.
Everybody thought that he had staged the whole thing and he was a con man.
Oh, of course. I mean, how could somebody just wander around the city for 3 weeks not knowing who they are?
Have we gotten to the point where we figured out how she was eating and drinking?
Oh, no, we haven't, but I am going to get to that.
Okay.
So the entire experience was humiliating for Hannah, because she was all over the news when she was missing. And then, of course, there were news articles that were very, skeptical about the story once she was rescued. And so, according to a friend, she even contemplated just changing her name, but decided that she wasn't going to run from it, that, this is what happened, and she was just going to deal with it. Her brother, Daniel, said that while Hannah never recovered full memories from those weeks, she did say that she had a feeling of just continuously roaming. And he thinks that maybe she understood on some level that people were searching for her.
Well, I mean, that would explain why she went out the back door of that Starbucks.
Exactly. Because
that's not, I mean, I can't imagine, like you said, there's most Starbucks in New York don't have, most storefronts in New York don't have back doors that are accessible to the general public. Yeah. And I can't imagine there's any that would like have it as a general exit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But it's interesting. And Daniel speculated that, like, I guess, based on his like conversations with her, afterwards, that she just like had this feeling of being hunted, but didn't really know why and was kind of being evasive. Back to your question about the food. As for how she survived, in addition to showering at her gym, Hannah had gotten involved with a freegan group just a few months prior to her disappearance.
I'm sorry, a what?
Freegan. Freegan. So I'm guessing you've never heard about this.
Is this like a weird thing, like a fruitarian from Notting Hill, where they only eat fruit that has already fallen off from the tree?
No, not quite. But it was a growing movement, especially in cities. So freegans try to combat the wastefulness of grocery stores and restaurants by basically dumpster diving for perfectly good food that's often thrown out at the end of the night.
Oh, so college.
I did not dumpster dive in college.
I mean, I didn't physically go into the dumpsters in college, but I definitely took food home from the restaurants that I worked at.
Oh, for sure.
Where I was supposed to throw the food away.
Oh, yeah, which is such bullshit. And same thing. Starbucks has a policy that you have to throw everything out, but a guy who lived across the hall from us senior year worked there and would bring us stuff home from Starbucks all the time. It was great.
Yeah, Sbarro's for me.
Mm-hmm. There's even a photo of Hannah in the Daily News smiling brightly next to a sack of bagels that had been rescued from the trash. And this is what's so crazy is because when all of this happened, I was living in New York.
Oh, that's right. Shit, this is the same time frame.
Yeah. So I was there. I have no memory of Hannah Upp going missing or being found at all, which is wild because
This is right up your alley.
And I was working right next to the river.
Right.
Like I saw, the freaking plane crash from, the Sully Sullenberger plane crash.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I didn't see the crash itself, just the debris afterwards, but being pulled out of the river. But like, I was right there and totally missed all of this. But I have a very clear memory of reading this article in the Daily News, like on the subway. And that's how I know what freeganism is, because of this one article that I read in 2008. And when I was doing my research, I was on...
She was pictured in it.
Yeah, which I had no idea. So I was going through newspapers.com, looking at, newspaper archives. And that was the first thing that came up because it was prior to her disappearance. And I saw the article. I was like, holy shit. Like, I remember this article.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's so wild.
But it's weird that like, I didn't remember... I don't remember seeing her posters plastered everywhere or anything like that.
I mean, I think that goes to, yes, the whole city was looking for her, but I mean, New York is enormous, and
there's a lot going on.
What is really, quote unquote, the whole city looking for her?
And in my defense, I was 9 months pregnant at the time, so I was preoccupied.
Pregnancy brain, then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just missed out on a story that it hits right to all of your interests.
I know. So what's even more astounding than Hannah surviving for 3 weeks is that as Hannah and investigators tried to piece together her missing time, they determined that she had likely entered the water the night before she was found.
What?
Yeah, like her skin showed signs of being submerged for a really long time.
She just went for a nighttime swim.
I mean, and just stay there overnight. So she managed to survive in the water throughout the night before her rescue the next morning.
Wow.
Can you imagine? So basically, and I didn't really get into this, but like there was a whole thing where, like I said, they're trying to piece everything together. And on September 11th, there was a lantern ceremony by the river, like a paper lantern ceremony to honor the victims. So lantern ceremonies are common in like Japanese culture, for instance,
right.
And she grew up in Japanese churches.
Right.
So they think that she was kind of drawn to that ceremony. and that she went there and then, left for a couple days and then like came back to the same place and then got into the water there. Like they think she slept on the beach and that's why half of her body was sunburned.
Right,
because,
laying on her right side.
Exactly.
Left side was up.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that she then like got into the water. Hannah did see a few therapists after her rescue, but eventually felt as though they weren't really helping her. They were so focused on a diagnosis, but her experience didn't exactly fit into any of the boxes that they were presenting her. So Hannah eventually just decided to move on with her life. About a year after her disappearance, Hannah, who had long been drawn to Quakerism, joined her mother at Pendle Hill. Though it is called Mecca for Quakers, Pendle Hill is actually a retreat for people of all religions. Hannah worked in the kitchen and attended daily meetings. She remained at Pendle Hill for the next 3 years before deciding to get back into teaching. Hannah became incredibly interested in the Montessori style of teaching, and she was hired on as a teaching assistant at a Montessori school for underserved children in Kensington, Maryland. It was here that Hannah went missing once again.
So now she's just outside of D.C., closer to our house in Kensington.
Yep.
And she's teaching at a Montessori school.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes missing again.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Tuesday, September 3rd, 2013 was the first day of school, but instead of heading to her classroom, a coworker reported seeing her that morning walking rapidly in the opposite direction of the school.
First day of school. Wait, did she ever actually start teaching up in New York?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
She went back to teaching.
So she went back to teaching, actually had her first day of school.
Yeah,
and then,
but when her first disappearance happened, that was her second year of teaching.
Oh.
So she had gotten through like a whole year before that. It's not like it was her first day ever.
Okay, but it is interesting to note, though, that the second time she goes missing is also the first day of school.
Yeah.
Again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first time she went missing a few days before the first day of school, but yes, this time it was the actual first day of school. Hannah's bag and other belongings were later found on a footpath several miles away from the school near Wheaton Plaza.
Oh my God, this is so weird because now we're venturing, like I'm very familiar with Wheaton, Montgomery County Mall, whatever it's called.
Yeah, because Wheaton Plaza is called something else now. But at the time, it was called Wheaton Plaza.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with that area.
Yeah. So she was there. So her school's in Kensington, and she actually lived on the grounds as well.
Oh.
And Wheaton and Kensington, at least the part of Kensington she was in, they're very close to each other, like a couple miles away or whatever. So when it says that she walked to Wheaton from Kensington, like we're talking 2 miles or something.
Yeah. So
they found her stuff just on a footpath, but no Hannah. And it was kind of the exact same thing that had happened before. But thankfully, this ordeal didn't last nearly as long as the one in New York. 2 days after going missing, Hannah found herself in the Wheaton-Glenmont area of Maryland. It's like 10:30 at night, and she was near a shopping center. So she went to the shopping center, found a stranger, asked to use their cell phone, and then called her mother to come pick her up.
Wow.
Hannah had found herself in a dirty creek about 1.5 miles from home with no recollection of how she had gotten there.
Again in water.
Yep. And she had been walking for 2 days. And as you've already picked up on, Hannah and those around her quickly noticed a few similarities in both of her fugue states. They had both started right before the beginning of the school year and right after returning from international trips with her father. So when I said at the beginning that she would travel with her father all the time, she would do it because she was a teacher. She'd do it in the summer. Both times she had traveled with him, came back, and then, a little while later had these fugue states. Both fugues also ended in bodies of water, with Hannah then quickly remembering who she was, but not what she had been doing in the time that she was gone.
So didn't you say that the doctor said that the fugue states could have been triggered by some sort of personal trauma?
Yeah.
And both times she had just gotten back from international travel with her father.
Well, yes. And so they asked the question. So the question, of course, was whether or not something had happened on these trips with her father that triggered these fugues. But Hannah traveled with her father all the time. Together, they had visited over 25 countries, and she had gone on many trips and returned with nothing odd happening later.
But how many times had she gone on trips that then corresponded with the first day of school?
I think most of them, because again, it's not like she had just gotten back the night before or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, she went around the same time every year.
Okay. I'm just trying to find similarities there.
I know. And so was everybody else. But they didn't think that was what was actually causing it. Hannah's loved ones were concerned about her and the potential of another fugue state. Unfortunately, technology was such at the time that one of the only available options to keep track of her was basically an ankle monitor, like that someone would, wear on house arrest.
Well, yeah, I guess they can't track her cell phone because she leaves all of her belongings.
Well, exactly, because that was really the only other option. But yeah, right. That wouldn't work in her case. And she, of course, didn't want to wear a friggin' ankle monitor like a prisoner. So, she declined. And now, of course, companies like AngelSense have created more friendly GPS tracking systems that are used for children and adults with special needs. But at the time, that just wasn't an available option. Within a few days of being found for a second time, Hannah returned to her job and completed the school year without further incident. The next year, she was hired on as a teaching assistant at a Montessori preschool in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. As you may have gathered from the story so far, Hannah had an affinity for water. She called living in St. Thomas paradise, and her apartment was her palace. Hannah began swimming in the ocean every day, eventually becoming so strong that she could swim to cays that were like 2 miles away from shore. She was thriving at her Montessori school as well. Administrators there knew about her condition, and they were open and welcoming. And she was like the best teacher. One of the administrators said that whenever they would have tours, like they'd always take people to Hannah's classroom because it was like the shining example of what it should be. After she completed her first year, the school paid for her to return to her home state of Oregon and take summer classes at a Montessori training center. The idea was for her to become certified in the Montessori method and eventually become a lead teacher. Everything was perfect for Hannah for several years until Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was a Category 5 hurricane that hit St. Thomas on September 6, 2017. 9 years earlier, Hannah was wandering around New York City without an identity. On this day, she was huddling with her roommates in their apartment's laundry room as the storm ravaged their island home. Hannah and her roommates made it through the ordeal, but St. Thomas was devastated. On top of that, Hurricane Maria was bearing down on the island and was set to hit a week later. Despite the imminent danger, Hannah didn't want to leave her new home. A few days after the hurricane, she met up with her ex-boyfriend, Joe Spallino, who was leaving on a Mercy ship, which was one of the many boats that were giving people free travel off of the island ahead of the next hurricane. He asked if she wanted to join him, but she declined. After leaving the marina that day, Hannah never used her phone again. But that's not the day she disappeared. The next morning, she went to her school and helped another teacher take pictures off of the walls to prepare for the storm. The teacher she was with, Norma Bollinger, said that Hannah was helpful, but wasn't acting like her normal, bright, bubbly self. Hannah arrived home to find that her roommates were also trying to leave the island before Maria hit. According to the New Yorker article, Hannah's roommate Leslie said that Hannah didn't want to leave. Instead, she wanted to be there for the students when things started to open up again. She wanted to help restore that sense of normalcy for those kids. So the next morning, September 14th, Hannah got into her car and left for school, but she never arrived. I don't think she had anything planned for that day, so when she didn't arrive on the 14th, nobody really became concerned at the school. I think she was just going there to, again, just do, prepare for the storm, do things for the classroom. But coworkers were concerned when she didn't show up for the staff meeting the next day on the 15th. They, of course, knew about Hannah's condition, but had never experienced anything firsthand. Hannah's friend Maggie Guzman started calling around and eventually found out that this was the exact time of year that Hannah's 2 previous fugue states had happened, and that she should look for Hannah near the water.
Right, but this is an island.
Right.
So there's a lot of water to look around.
Right, but she knew that Hannah's favorite spot to swim and snorkel was Sapphire Beach, so that's where her friends started the search. And while they didn't find Hannah there, they did find her belongings.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hannah's swimsuit cover-up, keys, and sandals were on a bar stool at a beach bar. So workers who were kind of cleaning up the beach after the hurricane had found them in the sand and had just taken them to the bar, assuming somebody would come back for them. Now, the car keys being there led them to Hannah's vehicle, which was in a nearby parking lot. Inside, they found her purse, wallet, passport, several $100s in cash, and her cell phone.
Right. Everything was left behind.
Just like both other times.
Yeah.
Hannah had survived in the water before, and she was an even stronger swimmer now. So hopes were still high that she would be found and rescued quickly. Her friends took a boat and searched the shoreline as well as a small island nearby. The Coast Guard got involved and sent out 3 helicopters, but no one saw any sign of Hannah. Thinking her fugue state took her elsewhere, friends also checked the passenger manifests for some of those Mercy ships, but her name wasn't found anywhere. And this was really tough too, because, doing this search, right? Because the Coast Guard, especially, they had other things going on.
I'm sure.
I mean, we're just days after a devastating hurricane. There are other people missing on the islands.
Right. And there's another storm coming in.
Exactly. So they had to prepare. I mean, there was a lot needing to be done. So the Coast Guard had to call the search off for Hannah after 3 days. Hurricane Maria hit, and after the rain subsided, more searchers were held. The thought was that if she had drowned, her body would float up in a few days. But it didn't. Searchers looked in homeless shelters, hospitals, anywhere she may have gone. Unidentified bodies were looked at in the morgue to see if any of them were Hannah, but none were. On November 20th, 2 months after her daughter's disappearance, Barbara booked a one-way ticket and flew to St. Thomas. She ended up living there for about a year, where she attended services at the island's only Jewish temple and kept up the search for her daughter. November 29th was Hannah's 33rd birthday. Friends and coworkers gathered at the school where she worked to honor her and to raise awareness about her disappearance. Over the months that Barbara was on the island, she became close to the people who lived there. She also dealt with many false sightings of her daughter. She would often get her hopes up only to have them dashed. On September 23rd, 2018, just over a year after Hannah's disappearance, skeletonized remains washed up on an uninhabited island off the coast of St. Thomas. Unfortunately, authorities were unable to get DNA or any other identifying information from the skeleton, and those remains are unidentified to this day. Could that be Hannah Upp? The general consensus is that she went for a swim the morning she went missing and went into a fugue state. Then something happened to her either that day or when Hurricane Maria hit on September 20th, and she died, possibly being swept into the ocean, never to be found.
And I'm assuming that because they couldn't do any other identification or whatever with the skeletal remains, it probably wasn't like a full skeleton. They probably couldn't get femur measurements to gauge how tall she
Correct.
was, or the remains were and whatnot.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because those remains do have a NamUs profile, and the NamUs profile, doesn't have an estimated height. It doesn't even have an estimated sex, because they often can tell that by the size of the pelvis, for instance.
Right, but if that's missing...
Right. So yeah, they did not have enough of the skeleton to make any of those determinations. That could be Hannah, but others believe that Hannah could still be out there alive. They think that perhaps she did make it onto a ship and ended up in Puerto Rico or St. Croix or Miami without her ID and just assimilated into a group of people who were displaced after the storm. While this scenario may be unlikely, if anyone could pull it off, her friends believe that it would be Hannah.
It's interesting because we have the juxtaposition of the last 2 times she went missing, when she went into this fugue state, but then came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have the story we previously covered with Lawrence Bader, where he created an entirely new identity.
Right.
So it's like, could the second happen or have happened with Hannah, where she went into a fugue state, got on a mercy ship, went to another city and created a completely different identity, even though that's not, those weren't the same traits as the first 2 times she went into that fugue state.
It's certainly possible. And her friends point out she was fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
So like if she ended up in Puerto Rico, say, she was the type of person who always loved joining groups. She always loved helping. She always wanted to be of service. Like being of service was one of her main core beliefs, one of her main characteristics. And they can see her just ending up again with like a group of displaced people and just joining that group and creating a new identity of just living a life of service somewhere. In fact, even Albie and George, the detective in charge of Hannah's case, told the Daily Mail that it was easy to travel around the Caribbean without identification after the hurricanes. I think it's completely possible.
I mean, yeah, it certainly is completely possible. It's also completely possible that those skeletal remains are hers.
Right. Or that something else happened and her body just hasn't been found at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that, the third time that she went missing, it's on an island, so it's a relatively smaller search area than like New York City or the greater Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah.
But then you add the ocean into it. So who knows?
So Hannah could legitimately be out there. And it's that hope that keeps Barbara going. She told the Mail, quote, "I just want to believe the possibility is given her talents and her strengths that she just deceived everybody again and got off the island and is still walking around in that state. And that one day she's just going to snap or someone is going to recognize her." End quote. Hannah Upp has been missing from St. Thomas, Virgin Islands since September 14th, 2017. She's a white woman with brown hair and brown eyes. She is approximately 5'7" and 120 to 130 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She was 32 years old when she went missing. She would be 39 today. Anyone with information regarding Hannah Upp's disappearance is urged to contact the Virgin Islands Police Department at 340-772-5605. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, And Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.